So thank you so much, first of all, for your time. We are glad we are here, and we get this opportunity to interact with you to know more about the EU delegation to India and the various projects and the assignments being taken up by EU.
Okay, so I have been here for 4 years. I came just after the government, the current government, came into place, and I decided to look into, what are actually the key priorities of the government. So my responsibilities were as Counsellor for Environment, Energy and Climate Change at that time, and it was all of them areas where the government had very ambitious plans. So of course we looked into the Clean Ganga, we looked into clean energy, Swachh Bharat, urbanization and smart cities. So all of these areas were really focused on some of the same things that I was working on. So I started by designing programs that would kind of match what the government was looking for, and then also, of course, European Union has 28 member states that are all here. They all have their ongoing activities, so the idea was that the European Union would be like a kind of an umbrella that would bring together everything that these 28 countries were doing, and really trying to add on and put them together in a very nice and harmonized package.
Okay, wonderful. Also, please shed, you said that more or less things were on sustainability, on environment, and that's the core area. And then when you joined in, you were trying to find out the right kind of collaboration for such project. So please shed some light on India-EU relations with respect to environment and climate.
So what we have done is we have developed a number of what we call partnerships. Partnerships is actually some kind of new term that we have developed over these last 4 years, that because before, what we had between the European Union and India, we had policy dialogues which were kind of government to government, and then we had development cooperation projects that were focused on specific solutions in maybe rural areas or small areas. And then we had research, and we had a number of different activities, but it was not really brought together. So the idea of this partnerships was to try to really bring all of this together in a kind of a multi-stakeholder platform, also involving the private sector, involving the European member states, as I mentioned, involving the Indian states. So taking it really from a government to government level and some ad hoc projects to something that was more comprehensive. So the first thing we started to do was a partnership on water, and we started with focus on the Clean Ganga, but very quickly we learned that a lot of the challenges that are in the Ganga are also challenges for rest of India's river and for many other water parts of India's water systems. So we started looking in a much more comprehensive way about what needs to be done in terms of water, and water is actually a really good cooperation project for us between the European Union and India, because you probably know that the structure of India and the European Union are very similar. So we have 28 member states, and we have the European Union level that kind of brings out the laws, and then the member states are implementing them. The same way here, we have the national level designing the laws, but every implementation is happening at the state level. And also the similar, especially on water, that is a transboundary issue. So of course a lot of cooperation between states is required. And in Europe we have a very good framework for that. We have a directive, a water framework directive, that is the main water law, and that has very good provisions for how actually this cooperation between states to cooperate on rivers at a river basin level, how that happens. So we thought there's something here really good that Europe has developed over some years that would fit perfectly to India. So we thought, let's have this as one of the cooperation priorities.
Wonderful.
And then we have expanded this later on and agreed. We now have a very good comprehensive work program for the water partnership, and we have 9 priority areas. So river basin management is one of them, but we have a lot of other things. Irrigation, things related to environmental flows. We have research and innovation as one of the priorities. So really a comprehensive program, but it's not like a very theoretical program. We're really trying to implement something in practice and then learn best practices from that. So this was water. Then since that went rather well, then we had the idea that we would try to do something similar on climate change. So we, the year after, we adopted a partnership that's called the Clean Energy and Climate Partnership. So exactly the same structure, but really focused on climate change and on clean energy. We have a number of different components in there. We are working on the solar parks program. We're working on rooftop solar. We're working on offshore wind. We've done a lot of work, and the government is now almost ready to launch a tender for offshore wind, which is something that also is really exciting for us, because it's
coming to the implementation part.
It is, and it's a place where Europe has taken some journey. It started out being a quite expensive form of energy, but the prices have come down very nicely. So we see that as a huge potential for India as well, to be part of the energy mix in that way. So a number of other priorities related to energy and climate change, so inside this partnership. And again, building on what our member states are doing and all the existing cooperation that's ongoing. Then the third partnership that we've agreed is the partnership on smart and sustainable urbanization. So the Smart Cities program was, of course, very exciting for us, but what we felt was important was that smart did not overshadow sustainable. So what is really important, we believe, and what is the European values, is that cities have to be sustainable and very livable. So we design our cities so that transport is very easy, that it's easy for people to live there, to commute, to bring children to school, to shop, to make sure that all of this is happening, in a very smooth way, and of course in an environmentally friendly way, so family friendly way. So we thought that some of these concepts could also be some exchange between India and the EU. So these are the main partnerships that we have in my areas. But then we also have an initiative on resource efficiency and circular economy, where we're trying to look at how can we, between India and the rest of the world, work on optimizing the resource use. We know that with the development of India and of other parts of the world, we will have too scarce resources of many of the key resources, and there are ways of trying to improve the way we use our resources, and this is another initiative. The last thing I wanted to mention is air quality, where we also have an air quality initiative between India and the EU. So
is this the new one, the recent one for the air quality one also, or it was like
air quality? Air quality has we had a small action trying to see what we could be doing, and now we are really in the process of designing a larger activity where we try to work together on this.
So you've got your players here also, like Indian players who have partnered with you?
Yes. So we try really, as I mentioned, to have it as a multi-stakeholder framework. So of course, government is, on the policy level, they are our counterparts, and we are. We're really trying, as I mentioned, to contribute to the government's priorities. But then, of course, think tanks, banks, other kind of agencies, private sector. All of these, all these research organizations, all of these, we try to integrate them in different roles. And also, even with non-EU entities, we also try to at least know what their activities are, because one of the reasons for designing these partnerships was also that we felt that there are a little bit of risk of overlap, because everybody looking at the Ganga, everybody wanted to do something in Varanasi, and
so everyone is working in their small
silo, and not maybe enough information flowing about what was happening. Right. So we thought we could have a much larger impact if we at least knew that this donor is working here, that donor is working there, and then maybe
we can collaborate,
bring it together.
Synchronize.
That's it. That was the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So you are in this role as a counsellor from past 4 years and more, I guess. That's over 4 years. So how do you describe the relations of EU and India with respect to water and environment in this period? Like, how is it?
No, I think these partnerships has really been, I would say, transformative for our relationships, because, again, I was trying to see it a little bit from the government's perspective, that it's maybe not so much in their interest to have just policy dialogues where we explain our policy, India explains its policy, and then we have a discussion, and then what? So we saw that it was very much needed to focus much more on solutions, on concrete things. So I would say that we've moved away from a rather very friendly but maybe a little bit dry relation to something that is a little bit more lively and where something actually is happening. So just I can mention that during month of September, we had two very big business delegations coming here. The first of them was the Circular Economy Mission, which was led by our Commissioner for Environment, Mr. Vella. And he had 80 businesses, European businesses, coming along. And we had a 5-day kind of program for them under the CII Sustainability Summit, and also together with FICCI, where they met with a number of Indian businesses. We had government to business, G2G, G2B, B2B, whatever kind of interactions. And inside this big conference, we had a lot of different presentations on this circular economy, resource efficiency, some different studies that we've done, sectoral studies. But what was nice about it was, I mean, we have many conferences and we can, talk forever about everything. But what was nice was that on the last day, we had new partnerships being formed between some of the Europeans who came there and the Indian partners. We had overall, I think we had something like close to 400 B2B meetings during those days, and we had a number of them that came in the last day and announced, maybe not signed, but at least cooperation was announced. Just yesterday I saw that one of the groups, or one of the three different partners from India and EU had agreed on something, and they announced it on that day. And yesterday they formally launched it. So there is some follow-up, and there's something concrete happening. There were, I mean, for our businesses, of course, it's very nice to come here and understand a little bit more in reality what is it that India needs, because there's a huge market, and everybody is very interested and inspired to come here, but also maybe it's a little bit difficult to understand from the outside. So in that way, it's very nice for them to come here and actually meet with people and see maybe their technologies need to be adapted to be more suitable to the Indian market. Maybe they need to develop completely new things. Maybe they need to have joint ventures with Indian partners. But yeah, so
seeing the on-ground situation, they get a better idea.
Yeah, and really both ways. I think both sides understand each other much better. So we did the same on another mission on clean energy and climate change at the end of September, and also there we had, I think, even more, over 500 B2B meetings, and also some very nice concrete initiatives being established. So so this is, I think that, I mean, I think really the cooperation is in a very good place right now, where we do something that is useful for India, where the EU has an interest, and where we can do something very, very concrete, very hands-on, that is beneficial to both sides. Because remember, India is not a developing country for us anymore. We are strategic partners, so we're looking for opportunities where both sides get benefits. Indeed.
Okay. Great. When we were discussing, you just shared that there are a lot of similarities with the European Union having 28 member states there, and then India also. So many states, and then the decisions at the central level. So if I talk specifically about water sector, so is there any similarity between the situation in any of the European state member and India?
Actually, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, the problems or the challenges that you see in certain parts of India, you have droughts, in certain parts you have flooding, at different time and space. We have exactly the same situation in Europe. Maybe a little bit more extreme here because of the more extreme climatic conditions, but still we have exactly the same. And this is really where I find that the match between our two parts of the world is really very good, because what we do in our legislation is we are not very prescriptive. So we have overarching principles, and we have methodologies of what needs to be done, how do you need to manage water, and which kind of objectives do you need to reach, but how you do it is completely free, which makes a lot of sense, because what is a cost-effective solution in Kerala or in Spain, in our case, in a drought-prone area, is not the same as what would be needed in Himalayas or in Finland for us. So really, a very big principle for us is cost-effectiveness of everything that we do. So we're trying really to, first of all, we make a very good analysis at a river basin level of what is needed. So before we start any investment, we actually analyze the situation very thoroughly, and then we find out how can we get to this state of the river or of the waters that we want to go. How can we reach our objectives? What are the costs of the different types of solution? And then we prioritize. So then, we do where we get most value for money first, and so on. So all of this, I think, is completely useful and comparable here, because of course, it's going to be hugely costly to do everything that we want to do. Right. So we have to make sure that we really get a lot of value out of every rupee or euro that we spend.
Correct. Every money spent.
Yeah.
Okay. We also heard that on 10th of October, please correct me if I'm wrong, 10th of October there was an innovative forum which was launched by you. So what was the idea behind that forum, and what were the outcomes of that event?
Yeah. Yes, so it's correct that we've been discussing for some time. We have a huge research and innovation cooperation, first of all, between the EU and India. And actually water has been one of the most successful areas. We had, in the last month, from last year until early this year, we had a joint call on water research, which is actually co-financed by both sides, with 15 million euros from both sides, so 30 million euros, and the projects have been awarded now. So we have, in terms of research, we have a very good cooperation, and water has been a flagship for us. So that's already very good, and these research programs will be integrated into the water partnership that I mentioned before. But then innovation is, of course, something that is really, really important, and it's something that we've been looking into for some time. How can we expand the cooperation on more innovative solutions? We have a lot of research that has been funded already. How can we get it closer to the market? But really to understand what are the needs on both sides in terms of innovative solutions, and how can we support a framework on both sides that really brings these solutions out? So how can we support startups? How can we support all these innovative players that are on both sides? And so it was launched, and really water was again one of the focus areas, and an area where we saw very positive interest and really a large number of ideas coming up on how can we support this innovation framework on both sides. So it's something that we are really excited about. Very, very successful. I was not there myself, but my colleagues tell me that it was very, very successful, and really with a lot of interest. So now we will digest all this input and bring it into some kind of format that we can really set it into the sea. I personally was involved in something that's called the European Innovation Partnership on Water before coming to India, and again it's something that is really crucial, because we have new challenges coming up. Challenges that we didn't even know existed 10 years ago or longer time ago. Plastics in rivers, microplastics, all of these things, and many more things. This is just an example. So we need really to find those new innovative ways of dealing with this. We need to find, as I said, cost-effective solutions. So there may be technologies that exist, but how can we make them much more affordable, so that they're suitable for this market? And many of these kind of challenges really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful, great knowing. So are there more such forums or events or plans in the pipeline?
So the focus in my areas right now is to really bring these partnerships more to maturity. I'm not going to say that they will ever be fully developed, and I think that's not even the idea. The idea is for them to be very dynamic, but the partnership on urbanization is the newest of them, and we will look very much into now how can we really make this a very nice partnership, a nice something very fruitful. So I've also just taken over the responsibility for mobility and transport. So personally, I'm quite interested in trying to see how can we address transport in cities and elsewhere, but in particular, how can we make sure that, as I said, linked to the livability of cities, how can we, maybe we would like to try to test out some connectivity systems. So how can you have electric cars linked with metros, linked with buses? In a way that actually with public transport that people can move around, or with electric cars or electric tuk-tuks or whatever, things that will make it easier to move around, will reduce air pollution, will reduce energy consumption, contribute to climate change. So these kind of things is something that I'm very inspired about right now. But of course,
thing we'll be hearing, I think.
we will probably be hearing about this in the next couple of years. Yes, and then of course, in the existing partnerships, there are so many things that we could address. So it's a question of finding out how to address them in the best possible way, how to make sure that there is some real added value and real results out of what we are doing. So that's the plan.
And I'm sure the way the efforts are being made, they're in the right direction, and we'll definitely see the results as well.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, so any specific message for the readers of Water Digest and for the viewers of WD News?
Only that there is a role for everybody in this. I mean, this is actually something where each and everybody, even private people, can contribute and should contribute. So we have to think about our choices. We have to make good choices for environment, for sustainability, for water, for climate, energy, for the planet every day. So we have to think about whether we actually need 18 degrees in our rooms. We have to think about whether we do need that plastic straw for our drinks. We have to think about can we find a better way of transporting ourselves? Can we find a way of even reducing our consumption of certain things? So there's a lot we can do, each of us, and also those of us who are lucky enough to work on this in a professional manner, that we really put our maximum energy and try to make sure that we collaborate as much as possible on this because it's really, really very needed. We saw a report coming out just now on what would actually be needed in order to keep the temperature rise of the planet below 1.5 degrees, and it is really significant. It includes the huge news in Europe. I'm not sure if also here the huge news in Europe this week was that we have to reduce our meat consumption by 90%. I'm sure here you're much better off because you already have a lot of vegetarians, but really there will be a lot of lifestyle changes that will be required in the private and in the professional sphere. So, thank you.